So let's come to the back to start with. I'll bring my notes. And we'll take again couple of breaths, just noticing what you landing here, what you coming onto your practice with, into your practice with. You could do that with your legs straight, kind of like a Shavasana position. You could do that with the feet on the mat in our constructive rest position. Maybe a little wiggle here or there. See what the breath pattern is doing or how it wants to adjust itself. Possibly also just letting the weight of the body drop for a moment so our somatic movements can rise from that sense of groundedness and working together with gravity, so that we start with as much sense of ease already. But then the movements that we're bringing in the beginning are meant to be effortless. So increasing that sense of ease in the joints, in our breath, and then bringing the mind and awareness to what we are doing, what is moving, how the body is moving. So having that curiosity. And you could take longer in stillness. We start with our good old friend Pelvic Rock. So at any point, you can have your feet come onto the mat, finding a distance that works. So probably hip distance, and starting to arch the lower back away from the ground, matching that movement with your inhale, and then pressing lower back onto the ground, and that would be your exhale. And continue at your own pace. Notice what you can feel. Initially, the tension could be more localized to that lower back, lower belly area. What is lengthening, what is shortening as you move? Where do you feel like a squeezing sensation? So I feel a squeeze in the lower back as I arch it away. And then I feel kind of this hollowness in the belly when I press the lower back onto the ground. And the two other connections that I always invite you to feel here is the moving in your neck, or kind of your chin bobs a little bit more towards the chest as your lower back arches and the back of the neck lengthens. Chin moves away from the chest as you flatten the lower back, and the neck kind of arches also a little bit. So there's that rhythm, your cranium and sacrum moving in a rhythm. More subtle than that is your pelvic floor. So the attention coming lower in the body. There's a little bit of a gathering as we exhale and press the lower back onto the ground. And it's not me really doing or squeezing anything, it's naturally there. And a widening when I'm inhaling. And that's happening every time you breathe. So you don't have only a respiratory diaphragm, there's several diaphragms in the body. Let's go a couple of more rounds with this. And then next time when the lower back starts to move towards the ground, bring the right knee to your chest. You could hold it with one hand, you could hold it with both hands maybe. And I'm not really squeezing it overly to the chest because I want to continue the rocking of the lower back, the arching and the flattening, while the knee comes closer to the chest and maybe a little squeeze as the lower back flattens. And then I'm letting it drift away as I'm arching to just making space for that movement. So if it's hard to hold with both hands, you don't have to. You can just have one hand on the knee. So a couple of times we've now added that right knee coming to chest. And think of all of this that we're doing right now as kind of like juicing up the tissues in the body. So I'm keeping, as I said, it as smooth, as effortless as possible. Okay, let's go one more like this. And then next time when you're starting to arch the lower back away from the ground, let that knee go, let the foot come onto the ground, and then slide it straight, maybe at a little bit of an angle over to the right. You can play with that actually where it is. So lower back arches, legs, the right legs just slid straight, left foot stays as is, and now rock the lower back with the right leg straight. So lower back again comes, flattens, and arches away from the ground while the right leg is straight. So a couple of times like this, and I'm keeping the right leg passive. Let's go 1 or 2 more times. And next time when the lower back flattens towards the ground, see if you can keep that contact. So lower back pressing firmly onto the ground, and right leg is gonna lift just, let's say, I haven't measured, maybe it's like 10-20 centimeters off the ground. We did that last week as well. So you feel the front of the hip, that's your hip flexor active. And then very slowly lowering it down on the ground. The whole time I'm aiming to keep the contact of the lower back on the ground. Right leg, my leg is still lowering. The moment it hits the ground, see if you can relax everything, soften everything. Notice the difference. And then do one more, like arching away from the ground. Inhale. Press the lower back slowly onto the ground, and then try to keep it there best as you can as you lift the right leg. And I have my right leg now gone a little bit over to the right, not a lot, oops, just a little bit over to the right as I lift it. Notice when you lift it too long, you kind of lose a little bit that sensation very close to your hips. Hold it for a moment, keep your shoulders and jaw relaxed, and then a slow lowering, a slow lowering. That's where our magic happens. So the slow release of that contraction in that muscle. Once the leg is on the ground, find that softness, find that kind of letting go, the muscle tone. And then we'll do one more. Arching the lower back away from the ground is the start on the inhale. Pressing the lower back onto the ground as you exhale, and then keeping that contact as the leg lifts. Now you keep breathing normally, so this doesn't have to be done to the rhythm of your breath. Notice as if your leg, this movement of leg lifted, I can feel my abdominals a little bit, and it's as if my leg kind of starts navel height, and that's not too false to say. The muscle that's lifting the leg is in front of the spine, attaching to all of your lumbar vertebrae. And the next time when the leg is on the ground again, let's find softness. Slide your left leg straight as well once you get there. Let's take just a short rebound. We're going to keep working on that right side, but for a moment, just notice the difference between that right leg, hip, and left. And then send your right arm up, and we'll do this reaching movement where the right heel is going to start to press or lengthen towards the back of the mat, and the right fingertips are going to reach towards the top of the mat. And I keep my leg active, so before I reach the heel, I kind of point the toes upward and I feel the musculature in that leg active. So there's two actions happening. There's a kind of muscle contraction and then reaching, call that pendiculation. And same is happening in that right shoulder, reaching and then relaxing. So I even bend the elbow, let the arm slide back a little bit, feel that moment of not doing, of receiving the effect. And then do that at your own pace twice more. So this leg becomes active, arm becomes active, and then reaches. And feel that reach almost again like starting from your waistline and then reaching up and down from the waist. Take a breath into that reach. In your own time, you're going to do one more. Don't forget that moment of pause. And then after the next one, again, just a short rebound moment so the arm can come back. We're sensing, we're feeling. And then one more movement with both feet coming onto the mat, this time a little bit wider than your hips. So have there be some distance between the feet. It's our windshield wiper movement with the psoas stretch. So my right arm could be out to the right, or you could at one point lift it a little bit kind of at a diagonal so it comes a little bit higher up, but it doesn't have to be next to your ear all the way. The knees are going to drop only to the left. So knees going to drop to the left. I press the inner foot of that right leg, inner foot of the big toe side of the right foot onto the mat and lengthen the right knee towards the back of the mat. A little bit like you were lengthening that heel just a moment ago. The pelvis is going to tilt a little bit more over to the left and then reach through the right arm as well. Inhale. So I've rolled just a little bit over. My right shoulder has come just a tiny bit off the mat. And then coming back to the center. Knees come up and that arm comes to a relaxed position. And that's what we'll do a couple of more times. Only to the left. So knees drop. The right knee reaches towards the back of the mat, and that reaching happens, my lower back arches, my right hip lifts a little bit more away from the ground, but I'm adding just a bit of pressure with that inner right foot onto the ground. What you can experiment with is squeezing that right bum a little bit. So there is this line of tension through the side body and then rocking back. So move like this couple of more times. Those who wish, so you could stay with this. Those who wish, you could start to make this into more of a rolling onto the side. So you could start to let that right shoulder start to come off the ground more. So you're rolling more onto that right side, and the right arm could reach the diagonal a little bit like we did last week, and then rolling back. So now it's your own personal kind of exploration, whether you stay with a smaller template, smaller movement, or whether you want to experiment a little bit more for reaching to the side and through the arm. We'll do a couple of more. Nice. And next time when you're on the back, let's slide again everything straight, unless again for your body it's more comfortable to feel more restful, just keep the feet on the mat and have the knees come together. So then you take your rebounds there, you take your little pause there. So we've done now a bunch of stuff on one side. Let ourselves feel and let the body, giving body time to integrate. What is it you notice? The experience of the body, the felt sense as it arises, as it shifts, as it changes. And back to the beginning. So we started with the feet on the mat. Let's do just a couple of pelvic rocks with the arching and flattening of the lower back, just a few. And next time when the lower back starts to come towards the ground, bring the left knee to your chest, holding with one hand or two hands, and keep rocking. So let that knee also reach away and towards the chest. And I'll give you a little bit more quiet spaces on this time, so not so much instruction. Keep finding the smoothness, the softness. Your image is my body is fluid, my tissues are hydrated and juicy. And next time when you're beginning to arch the lower back away from the ground, the foot comes onto the mat and slides straight, and you kind of keep arching the lower back until the leg is straight. That's your inhale. And then flattening. So you keep that same pattern, but now the leg is straight. Same images, same messaging. And next time, when the lower back starts to come onto the contact with the ground, keep that contact again best as you can and begin to lift that leg. The noticing here, just have your mind in that front hip area. What do you feel? Feel that activation. Don't lift it too high, and be with that movement. Really be there with that movement as you slowly lower, keeping that contact with the ground, keeping your breath flowing. Don't hold the breath here when moving slow. And then that relaxation, softening. Also that my right foot relaxes. Take an arch for the lower back on your inhale. When you're ready to go in again for the next round, flatten lower back onto the ground. Keep that contact. Do the leg lift. The slow lowering at your own pace with noticing. Soften shoulders, jaw. And the letting go once the leg is on the ground, and we'll do one more. Start with the arching. And the moment that you're finished, don't rush it. We sliding the right leg straight as well. So we'll take a short couple of breaths here to feel, sense, encouraging again the weight of the body to drop. And then I'm sending the left arm, doesn't have to be straight up, it can be at any angle. So Louise, with your arm, just find an angle that works, or do just the leg if the arm reaching doesn't work. Or just the squeezing of the arm could also be just an option. And then this reaching, so both arm and leg are going to reach the opposite direction, but find that muscle activation and reaching at the same time. This is what your dogs and cats are doing when they stretch. Inhale, reach, feel, breathe into that stretch, and then relaxing, passive. Noticing this part as well. It's not just the doing part. It's the part when we encouraging the muscles to soften, find their relaxed, untensed state. Reach, heel to the back, fingers to the top. And relaxing, and I'll do one more. You might be doing this at a different pace. So take a breath, one last. And then bring the arm back. Once you've done the next one, take a breath and feel again, just a short moment. And lastly, the feet come onto the mat a bit wider than the hips. The arms come out of the shoulder, your arms come at shoulder height. And left arm could come a bit higher up so that when we drop the knees, there can be more of this reaching through the side body, and that shoulder can begin to lift a bit off. So to the right this time, knees drop. The reaching now happens through the left knee, reaching towards the back, a little bit of a pressure down towards the ground through the left inner foot, maybe a squeeze in the left bum, breath, arm reaching the opposite direction, and then there's a rocking back onto your back. Do it at your own pace, at your own level of intensity. And then on this side, you know where we're going. So at any point where you feel that it is interesting for you to explore, letting yourself roll a little bit more, that arm to reach either up or diagonally over. So let this take shapes that feel good in your body. And we'll go a couple of more times. And next time when you're on your back, let's slide again, the legs straight. That little rebound moment is really part of the practice of letting the awareness come and sense these little shifts and changes. Feel how the body settles to ground. And then I wanted to add a couple of things on the belly before we come into our movement part. So flopping, if it is comfortable for you to just flop over onto the belly. If you need to change direction to see your screen better, you could, but hopefully my explanation will be clear enough. So on the belly, with the right hand on top of the left hand and forehead coming onto that right palm. So for a while we kind of haven't done those elbow lifts. And so part of what we'll initially do is for that upper back area. So I have my forehead on the back of that right hand, and I'm beginning to lift and lower my elbow. So the movement is not going to be big. And I try to not overly press my hand down to lift the elbow, but to feel that I'm doing it from the back of the shoulder blade there. I inhale as the elbow lifts and let there again be this slow lowering. What you might start to notice is you're kind of starting to drop a little bit more over to the left, or a little bit more of the body weight drops over to the left. I also like to eventually start to lift the right palm off the back of the left hand, so only my fingertips stay in contact with the left wrist. So in that way, being able to lift that right elbow a little bit more, and there's more of that rolling over to the left. But you can play with that. Let's do a few more where you focus on the quite a slow lowering down and that moment of pause, 1 or 2 seconds of pause. Once the elbow is back on the ground and everything's settling into ground before you come into the next round. And I like to come into the movement on the inhale and lower on the exhale. Let's do one more repetition. And next time, when the elbow is down, pause for a moment, relax both shoulders, relax both legs, wiggle your bum from side to side. And swap the hands, so have the left palm come on top. And so the same movement from here. Initially, as I start to lift and lower the elbow, I keep the whole palm in contact with the back of the right arm. So the movement actually is not going to be that big. But my mind is there. My mind is really noticing, being present with it. Eventually feel free to start to peel the palm off of the back of the right hand, so just the fingertips might stay in contact with the bottom hand as you lift, so that you can sense the body rolling a little bit, becoming heavier on the right side, the weight shift over to the right side. So it adds a little bit of that twist to the spine. And let's do 1 or 2 more depending on your pace. And next time, when elbow comes down, take a moment, let everything again relax and drop into ground as much as possible, as much as the body is willing to. Have a little wiggle. And let's take us into a Sphinx pose. So bring the forearms down onto the ground. Just notice we haven't done, we've done a little bit of back bending when we were doing the windshield viper. So see how the back feels, and if having your elbows too close to you or under the shoulders feels a bit too much at this stage, walk the arms slightly forward. I'm going to take a passive one for a moment, just to kind of like taking a temperature, letting the legs flop. Couple of breaths. Maybe move your neck around a little bit from side to side, looking to the right, looking to the left. Let's take one more breath. And then let yourself slowly lower down onto the ground. Begin to bring the hands under your shoulders to start to press away from the ground. As you come to all fours, what does your spine want? Does it want to start to find little movement? Does it want to go back towards child's pose for a moment? Just check how the lower back, what's the energy in the body? Are you still wanting to kind of have a still moment, or are you itching to move already? And if you did have a blanket over, you could also remove that now, so that we can come to the more active part. All right. So let's continue with feeling movements in the spine. You could start with cat and cow. That's just one way the spine can move through. It's called flexion and extension in the spine. See if you can slowly, intuitively start to find different shapes. Letting your hips move, letting yourself come closer to the ground, away from the ground. Feeling into these lateral parts. How can I move laterally from side to side? And the image again is still fluid, snaky, juicy, hydrated. Let's stay with it for just a little bit longer. And then step your hands just a little bit more forward, kind of forward from the shoulder. So we'll just do like a preparation for downward facing dog. And I'm pressing my hands firmly into the ground the whole time. So as I press the hands down, I start to move the hips back, but it's not rounding the back buttocks back. Almost think of a downward facing dog shape. As you move your hips back, and the sit bones stay somewhat lifted. So I'm not aiming my bum back towards the heels. I'm actually letting all of my attention stay in the shoulder area. So as I move my hips back, I keep firm contact and pressure with the palms down towards the ground. So I feel activation around the shoulders, and then slowly bringing the shoulders back forward. So going like this couple of times, leaning back, hips away. Imagine that would be that downward facing dog movement where the hips are moving up. And you could stay with this, or you could actually then tuck your toes under. You might need to bring your hands a little bit closer and then actually reach the hips away, but keep pressing the hands down and forward. And if it is your first, it is your first down dog, but let it wiggle and move a little bit once you get there. So give it a couple of more breaths. Then return back to all fours. And imagine that, like, take the back of your wrist onto the mat of the right hand and just bring it kind of a little bit closer to you. It's hard to explain. And then see if you can start to make circles. So I'm going to circle the fingers forward and bringing the bottom of the wrist down. So I'm kind of trying to do this circling with the wrist, letting my rest of the body kind of figure its way around. How can I make it happen? So my wrist is, what we usually do is circle the wrist up in the air. So now I'm asking you to circle the wrist on the ground. And this is meant to be a little bit playful, so you don't have to do it perfectly. And my body has to kind of wiggle and move to navigate this constraint that I'm given it, that the wrist has to stay touching the ground the whole time. And then we'll swap to the left one. Or maybe you feel that right wrist for a moment, and then swap it to the left one. So I'm doing wrist circles with this constraint that the part of the wrist always has to touch the ground. And I found left one much harder. Give it another. You can let it totally float around on the mat. Good. One more. All right, so now we've, a little bit of wrist love, and then let's find ourselves back on all fours. Let's turn the attention towards the hips a little bit. So I'm going to bring the right knee to the chest, and I'm going to bring it towards kind of like the right armpit and squeeze. And then I'm going to bring the right knee across towards the left elbow. And then I'm going to start to bring it out to the side. So imagine that there's like these points at the left wrist, at the right armpit, then out to the side. And then I'm going to circle it behind the left knee. It maybe taps onto the ground, maybe not. So crossing it behind. And then I circuit it back. So it comes out to the side. It's again going to come and as if it wants to touch the right armpit and as if it wants to touch the left elbow. Then it backtracks to the armpit, out to the side, and then back behind that left knee. Maybe it taps onto the ground, maybe not. And go like this through that circuit, pausing at those points for just a moment as if there's a button there that I'm pushing. One more time. So across the chest, like a little squeeze. Armpit, out to the side. And then next time when it comes behind, see if you can have the knee come down onto the ground with the left knee in front. And a couple of times and I'll give you an alternative if you can't do this. Couple of times we're going to lean the hips back. I'm not taking it all the way back, and my left knee is going to lift off the ground. And then coming back onto all fours. So one option is your legs across. If that's not working to you, be on all fours and have that right knee be a little bit further back than the left knee. So not next to each other, but right knee a little bit further back, and then move your bum back and forth. So just a couple of more times, whether the legs are crossed or just the knees are a little bit staggered. Go once more. Any amount. And And then next time, when the hips on top of the knees, let's uncross and then circle the right knee all the way to the top of the mat. Let's take a lunge, back knees down on the ground, front knee finds the ground, rising up. You could come and lift the arms up. You could keep the arms on your front thigh, whatever feels more stable. If the arms are up, give the shoulders a little bit of like options to find their place, to circle the shoulder blades, and then they find their position. Give it another couple of breaths, feeling the front of that left hip, back of the neck long. Let's slowly lower the arms and straighten that front leg best as you can. So I like to wiggle it slightly forward. If you have blocks, bring blocks in. If having hands on either side of the leg doesn't work, then you could also try hands on the inside. Sometimes that is easier. Let's feel the back of that leg as well. Again, just a breath in, a breath out. Excellent work. Let's circuit that right leg back. Either stay with a little bit of wiggling on all fours or reach for downward facing dog. Coming to plank pose, so that could still be that your knees are down on the ground and you're on all fours, or a moment of finding your strength in the plank. Pressing the palms down, back of the neck long, a little bit of tone in the legs. And then we lower onto the ground. And finding your back bend. So it could be that you lift up into a baby cobra. Could be that you stay with the Sphinx that we practiced before, but now you keep it a little bit more active. Give those a try. See how your back responds. Let the shoulders again find a position other than hiked up, so feel that your neck is long. Take a breath into the shape. And then let's lower onto the ground and up to all fours. Bringing the hands under the shoulders, and then that little knee tapping thing on the left side. So I'm hugging the knee in towards the left armpit and just having a little pause there as the knee hugs. Then it comes across the chest as if I want to touch that right elbow. It moves out to the side, so it lifts directly out from the hip. And again, there's a little pause. And then it circles behind the right knee, maybe taps onto the ground, maybe hovers. And so explore that, moving back to knee out, towards the armpit and having a squeeze across the chest and a little moment of pause. And taking it back towards the armpit, to the side, behind the right knee. Let's go one more. Whenever you need breaks, you're going to take a break, right? Armpit, across the chest. And then I'm starting to slowly make my way to that last point where the knee is either behind, and you can move your feet a little bit away from each other, or it's just a little bit back of the right knee, but not crossed behind. So that is also an option. Then move your hips back and forth with sensitivity. So as I lean back, if you have the legs crossed, the right knee is going to lift off the ground. Whichever works. So either they crossed, or you have your right knee slightly forward of the left knee, but they parallel. Let's go 1 or 2 more times. And then next time when your hips are on top of the knees, take that left leg, lift it up, knee up, step it to the top of the mat. Adjust your stance for your lunge position. So you have that back knee not too far forward. As you rise, let the arms either come up or help with balance as they stay on that thigh. Let the shoulders move so that they can find a position where it feels comfortable. There feels that there's space in the shoulders. And the hips are going to find somewhere where they're not completely dropping. So I'm keeping that front foot engaged and rooting down. Let breath flow through this shape. As the arms come down, the front knee straightens, so either you have the hands on either side or you have your hands inside. See which one works for you to feel now the back of that leg. Or maybe you have blocks, so then you bring her up. You could be moving back and forth or just feeling. And you know it, we always do it in a way that we just come to that sensation of stretch, and I'm not pushing beyond that, I'm just pausing there. You could be here more passive, or you could tug that heel onto the ground and drag it slightly back so the muscles are a bit more active. Different ways. Excellent. And then I'm going to bring the foot down, and on this round I'm aiming to bring us to the top of the mat or to kind of this forward fold shape. So back toes tuck under, the back foot steps forward, the feet stay hip distance apart as you in a forward fold. Feel free to experiment here, bending and straightening the knees to feel the back body. And then at one point we going to soften the knees and actually roll up for a moment to standing. So take your time with that, pressing the feet down. As you roll all the way up, might be nice to move your shoulders a little bit, to shake the hips out a little bit. We don't get to stand very often in these practices. All right. So I just wanted a little bit of a balance play to set us off into our day. So feel both feet on the mat, looking straight forward, and maybe start to just rock a little bit back and forth at first, and then finding your balance. So a little bit of swaying out of balance will start to tell you where that balance point is for you when both feet are grounded. Take a couple of more breaths to feel into that sensation, or tapping into just momentarily the sensation of balance in the body. And then, as you might have guessed, we're going to bring the more attention to the right foot, so we're starting to lift one foot off the ground. And I like to keep my standing knee slightly buoyant but responsive, so there's a more of a conversation with the ground as I play. So I'm bringing that knee up, and there's, again, you could be kind of like just staying here, or you could return to this simple kind of moment of just balancing on one leg. What I'm going to offer is, at first, the left foot is just going to tap to the ground right in front of you. Then it's going to find a point that is diagonally to the left of you, behind you. And then it's going to tap a point that's diagonally to the right of you. So it's crossing a little bit like we did with the knee. And then it's going to come back to the front. And you could stay with very little bend, touching those areas. Or you could start to play more, like playing like how much can I bend that front knee. And you can use your arms. So my arms are moving, they're helping me balance. So you can add a little bit of challenge by lowering, a little bit of coordination, a little bit of proprioception, knowing where your body is in space. Let's do maybe one more. And you could do just taps, or it could be more like, okay, for a moment I'm going to rest my leg, for a moment I'm going to have a little bit of more contact with the ground, or it could be just kissing the ground. Yeah. And after the next one, bring it onto the ground, have a little shake. Yeah. And then we'll try the other side. So start simple and know that you can come back to that. So you could always just have a little pause and have a little play with getting to feel your left foot, having a little bounce, having the right toes really close to the ground, so you can always kind of kiss the ground and have a little bit of help. And then right foot forward, tapping, right foot out to the right, diagonally tapping, and then behind the left tapping. And then make it your own. Stay with a little bit more pressure as the foot comes down and helps you balance, or stay just with the kissing action. And it gets harder the more you're gonna obviously bend into that front knee. And let the arms help you, so you don't need to hold the arms static, and there's no clear pattern for the arms, but you could find some reaches, like when the leg goes diagonally, the arm reaches. When it goes behind, the other arm reaches. One more round. Good. And then let's have a little wiggle. Maybe a little bit of like tapping of where you feel. So I feel the outer hip and the bum. So you could do a little bit of tapping there. And let's take us towards the ground again. Now that we have our hearts pumping. Slowly starting to wind down. So take yourself to a forward fold first, if that works for your body, and then towards a squat from there. We're coming close to the ground. If you want to stay a little bit longer in the forward fold, you could, versus a squat. Take a breath. And then taking the hands back behind. For just a short moment, bringing the soles of the feet together. Have them press a little bit towards each other for a moment. And then relax that contact. Slide the feet maybe a little bit further away if you hadn't already, coming into a forward fold. And we don't have a long time here, but for about 5 breaths, holding it at a really comfortable edge. So if it feels too intense, just back off, have your hands brace against the ground. If the body feels willing, you could give it your body weight a little bit more to gravity. If the breath rate from the last balance practice is still quite rapid, and slowly encouraging the breath to begin to even and slow. No need to rush it. It's a good practice as well to let ourselves temporarily go into a little bit more active state, sympathetic state, and then being able to return to calm. Let's give it another inhale here. Empty that breath all the way out. And then begin to slowly walk up and lie onto your back, or rest in any way that feels good. I have just about 3 minutes space that I'm going to hold for us here. So if you know that you want longer, consider maybe silencing me. And if you prefer to use those 3 minutes to just stay seated in a seated meditation, then that could also be an option. If you're lying on the back, feel that the posture, the way you situated yourself is comfortable. If you're seated, the same thing. Maybe once more bringing to mind water-like quality and consistency of the body, so fluid. I'm fluid. My tissues are well hydrated. And there's space in my body, in my joints, and in my mind. I can move with ease. If you have time and space to stay longer, I actually encourage you to do that. If you know that this was the time you had, start to make your way to seated in a way that's not rushed. See if the body wants a little bit of movement on the back. Consider rolling to one side and gradually up from there. Take a little moment once you've arrived to see, to just sense how the body is feeling. Maybe you want to set an intention for the day or a focus, I'm going to stay with, I feel my body feels spacious, my mind feels spacious, my day is going to be spacious. And if you have a gesture that you want to add here, I'll do that prayer hand honoring. Thank you so much for joining.